Dear listeners, today you're listening to the 20th episode of the Inkwell podcast. Our guest for today is Philip Charter. Philip works as a writing coach. His main professional task is to help multilingual writers such as myself to achieve their writing authority and future-proof their careers. Today we have discussed some important topics such as what is writing authority and what are the main mistakes that multilingual writers make when communicating in English. If you are interested in writing and want to write better, I'm certain that you will enjoy our today's episode. Let's jump into it. Hello, Philip.
Hi there, Valius. Thanks for having me on the show. It's good to be here.
How's the morning in the Canary Islands?
It's a beautiful day, like always. We're very focused on Carnival at the moment. So there was parties last night and there's more parties this week. It's actually in the neighbourhood. It's being hosted in the neighbourhood where I live. So it's very loud and there's a lot of people on the streets. But it's something that's kind of very treasured in the Canary Islands. And I live in Las Palmas de Gran Canaria, which is, I can't remember if this one or if Tenerife has a bigger carnival, but it's the biggest in Spain anyway. It's the most people on the street and the biggest party.
Well, it's also happening here on Madeira, and as well, I just had a lesson with a Portuguese student of mine. It's also happening in mainland Portugal. So it's a big event in the cultures of Iberian Peninsula. Let's put it that way. Well, anyways, Philip, I'm very, very happy that you joined in today. And it's going to be very interesting to talk with you. I know that you're a writing coach, which is a very interesting profession. So could you tell me a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Of course, yeah. I'm Philip Charter. I'm an author and a writing coach. How that came about is I was a language teacher. I was an English language teacher, teaching English as a foreign language and lived in various places around the world. And also at that time started writing. I write fiction mostly. And then I put those two things together for, there's two things that I love, which is languages and helping writers and people whose first language isn't English. And talking about writing and helping people to do it better. Nowadays, what I do is work with multilingual writers. So that means, again, writers who are professionals, they're copywriters, content writers, maybe they have personal writing projects or they're communications professionals, and they're using English professionally, but it's not their first language. And I run courses and a community and write lots of guides and tips to help people.
So you switched from being a business English teacher into being just generally a business teacher in terms of writing. In a way, of course, different clients come with different questions, but are most of your clients business people, or also there's a variety of different type of clients that you have?
I suppose there's a variety. Sometimes I help people with creative writing and their own personal projects. I'm not so much of a book coach. That's another angle of the literary world now, is that there are book coaches and mentors that help people to get their book in shape and to write it and to publish it. I'm more helping. Typically, like a typical client might be, let's say, a copywriter from Brazil who's using Portuguese at work, but they're looking to get clients from the US. So they have a good level of English and they want to try and get clients from the US because they pay better or they're going to get better opportunities. Or maybe they're remote workers like content writers in Europe who write in English and looking to get hired by a content agency or to write in-house for a company. So I suppose, they're usually doing this for their professional goals, whether that's getting clients, getting a new job, getting a promotion, or improving the quality of their work so their editors or managers are happier with it and don't have to correct it so much.
Got it. Got it. And I don't know which languages do you speak. You mentioned Brazilian, let's say, person. By any chance, do you speak Portuguese?
I don't speak Portuguese. I speak Spanish because I've lived in my time in Argentina and Mexico and Spain. So I speak Spanish at kind of upper intermediate level. And I've worked with a lot of Spanish and Portuguese speakers. So I guess with Portuguese, I can understand a lot of
Yeah.
what is being said, but I don't use it. It just so happens that of late, I've worked with so many Brazilians and Portuguese people that I'm thinking I really should learn Portuguese because it would just be nice to have a chat in that language too.
Well, being an upper intermediate speaker, I guess you definitely understand most of Portuguese. Uh, but in a way, like for me, being a teacher of Lithuanian and of English, I do have some students that are from Portugal, and helping it really helps me a lot because I do understand why they make certain mistakes or why they want to say certain things in one way or the other. So, like being multilingual yourself, I guess it helps when you're working with certain clients because you understand where they're coming from. So, let's say if you're working with Spanish people, you understand why they want to say it one way and not the other. So, what do you think? Like, does learning, for example, Spanish help you with your work?
Definitely, 100% for two reasons. The first is I can understand and empathize with language learners. So, if they're saying, "Oh, I'm finding it difficult to motivate myself to learn new vocabulary or something," I'm like, "Well, I did too, but I solved by doing this." Or what worked for me was another thing. So I think it helps just get on the same wavelength as language learners. I think with my clients, they're not all so much actively learning English because they're often C1 plus. So they're looking to unlock, like, oh God, I don't like that word, unlock. They're looking to understand that the difference in technical phrasing and sentence structure and things like that. What's different about their first language in English? So, like you said, does knowing Spanish help me to understand why writers would want to phrase things in one way or another? Yes, and I think there's not so many people who are multilingual, are experts in English and at writing, and could help people understand things like rhythm and flow, or I mean, a typical example is with Romance language speakers. They generally use longer sentences because in their first languages, Italian, French, Portuguese, that's normal. You'll have 5, 6 clauses in a sentence,
Yeah.
and in English that drives us crazy. We're like, oh, we can understand one thing per sentence pretty much. So yes, we want variety, we want some difference in sentences, but an example of how I would help a Spanish speaker is to look at sentences that they've written which are too long and show them, oh, what can we cut, or how can we break this up so that the next time they're writing on that topic, they can think in English and think for an English reader, so that their work is more natural sounding in English, rather than like a translation from a long sentence with lots of buts and ands and ors.
Well, it's actually quite interesting because it really illustrates the point that you cannot separate a language from the culture and from the way of interacting and seeing the world. Because if you don't understand, um, let's say, how English speakers formulate their thoughts, like shorting them up so that it's clear. So I guess it's one of the most important things is to be clear. And then of course you add the elegance, you add many different kind of things. But if from the very beginning it's unclear, most likely it's not going to be a good read. and it's very important. But I guess maybe in other cultures, maybe flowery language is more important than clarity. For an English speaker, that's most of the time not the case. And I understand what you have said, because in Lithuanian, when I write, we also can put many clauses in a sentence.
You're
And
right.
sometimes we can also have like a sentence which is like, I don't know, 4 lines or 5 lines with a lot of commas, because there's a general rule. I believe, by the way, this will be interesting from you as a writing coach. Is it true or not? But this is how I think, that in Lithuanian, the more commas you put, the better. And in English, it's the other way around. Is that
More or
true?
less, yeah, more or less, I'd agree. It's such an interesting topic. Going back to what you said about like you can't separate culture and language. That's a great point, and one of the things I love about my work is trying to help writers still sound like themselves and have a voice. You know, if you're from France, then that's part of who you are and it's part of your culture. And it's a real strength to have that. It's not, oh, you're not American, you're not British, so, you know, you're not going to, you know, be as good as those writers. That's rubbish. You're just different, you know, and that's a strength. So I find that interesting. I think that leads into, you know, say if a French speaker is writing these long flowing sentences with flowery language, and that's the way that French is written, and it's not quite so true in English. Yeah, I guess my next point is a lot of the need for clarity and shorter sentences is because of the way that we read. Everyone is reading on a screen now, and we skim and scan and read very quickly. So that's why we need lots of formatting, lots of white space, and shorter sentences. But the problem with that is we get this advice which is just too simplistic, like, oh, you have to be clear, not clever, or oh, you have to use Hemingway editor and make sure you get a very high readability score, you know, right for a 5-year-old. And it's like that's helpful at first because it's a good reminder to keep things clear and simple. But if you're a professional writer and if you're looking at being better than AI and getting hired by good companies or getting better opportunities, you have to know when to use a longer sentence, and you have to know which kind of flowery language to include to build your authority and to set yourself out as an expert writer and get people paying attention to what you're saying. So yeah, I think some of the advice out there is a bit simplistic. And yeah, of course, it depends what you're writing as well. If you're writing a
True.
very simple how-to guide, you don't want any kind of room for interpretation. But if you're writing an opinion blog, then it should be varied, and people should be reading it in a deeper way. So yeah, it's really interesting to try and help people develop, tread the line. I guess there's a line between like what is natural sounding and effective English and what sounds like your real voice. And there's no hard line. It's always a discussion, and we work together to figure that out.
Good. And you also mentioned establishing authority. And also, when I was looking through your LinkedIn profile, I read that one of the things that you do is actually you help writers establish their writing authority. What does this phrase mean to you? What is writing authority in your minds?
That's a great question. It's a bit of a buzzword, to be honest, because it's one of these terms which is subjective. What is authority? It's difficult to pin that down, and it sounds quite good. So lots of people say it. I use it because I think it's, in a nutshell, it's like the value that people place in your words. If your writing has lots of errors in it and it's not very interesting and it's very low level, people don't respect you as a writer. You're unlikely to get these better opportunities of higher paying work or better clients. So yeah, I think authority comes from, as well as your writing. So say you've got a portfolio and you've got some fantastic work in there, that can build your authority, but it also comes from your profile and using social media or platforms, or getting readers, like building a readership, however you do that, whether it's a newsletter or on social media. I think that also builds authority. I mean, another thing you could say is having a book. As a fiction writer, if you have a book, people instantly understand that, like, oh, you've written a book. I should listen to what you say.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a bit of a tricky term, authority, because it doesn't have one meaning that everybody agrees upon. To me, it's like whether people place value in what you say, and there are many different things you need to do to ensure that's right. The first of which is being accurate. If you send an application letter for a job and it's got a spelling mistake in the second word, it doesn't matter if you're the best candidate ever. You're not getting the job because your authority's just gone. You lost it. So that's one of the primary things is being accurate.
Well, let's speak about this, but from a more simplistic angle in a way, because I still work as an English tutor and I teach many professionals, and most of them also want to establish writing authority because they're looking for a better position, or they want to change jobs, and writing is important for them. And most of them are also higher level English speakers, so to say. But they come with different kind of questions. And one of the questions is the difference between formal and informal English, right? And there are common things that people ought to know, like don't use love, comma, your first name when you're handing a letter, right?
Yes.
But everyone knows that, there are certain phrases that you ought to use, like kind regards or what have you, dear Sir Madden. Those are the basics. Also, like contractions, right? You shouldn't use contractions in formal language. At least that's what we were taught in school when we were learning that. But because you dive a little bit deeper in it than a regular lesson on formal and informal English that the teacher would give, are there any subtleties besides like choosing the word get or receive, right? Or is this distinction artificial? Or are they legitimate rules, like don't use contractions, select the right vocabulary, let's say use the right greeting and the right closing? Or is it artificial or not? And are there things that even people, when they know these things, they still miss?
Yeah, I think the problem goes back to the way English is taught, grammar, well, not grammar books, but textbooks and school teaching is so out of touch with the reality that we live in, of a globalized world where we're emailing people from different cultures. And that's why this question of formality has so many different angles to explore. So one is that what's most important is the reader and you communicating in a way which they can best understand. So an example might be, as a native speaker, especially in Britain, we prefer indirect language, right? If somebody says, hey, Phil, I want the documents today, send them. I think that's rude, like that's too direct. But in other cultures, like in Dutch, they much prefer direct language. And if you write to someone saying, if I could ask a question, would it be possible for you to send them by the end of the day? They might just write back and say, no, that's not possible. When in fact you're asking them, you're sort of saying, I need them, please send the documents. So I think, that the way English is taught is like, oh, there's formal and informal. There's the right way and the wrong way. And it's much more complex than that. So the first point is, yes, it's about the reader and your understanding of culture. I mean, we're often in business like communicating between continents as well. So there's the, more European way of thinking. You might be writing to someone in China and being able to write in a way which gets the result you want. That's the most important thing. Isn't whether you're, using contractions or not. It's like, well, are you getting the result you want? Yeah, and I think the second aspect of formality is there are several levels of formality in English, 4 or 5, you could say. So I suppose it's picking the elements from each which you think the reader will appreciate and will best understand. In some contexts, I think we're moving more towards an informal approach. Like, I receive a lot of messages from people looking for writing work or wanting to introduce themselves, and they want to show respect, and they come from a culture where it's very important to use formal language. But to me, I don't, oh, dear sir, I henceforth write to you to request it's like, that to me shows that somebody doesn't understand the way I work and operate, and therefore they're not like an expert writer. So it can harm your writing if you're too formal. I think it's a good idea to learn some of the reasons for formal language. So yeah, you're right, contractions and the word choice of how long a word is. Longer words are generally more technical or more formal. Things like whether you use the passive voice, whether you use introductory phrases in a sentence, whether you use a more complex sentence structure. I think those are aspects which can make things more formal. But yeah, it's very important to learn about the culture of the people you're writing to and all of these different aspects of formality.
So in a way, I think it's also very important to catch up with the everyday reality of what's happening now, because as you said, the way that these things are taught in schools and so on, most of the time are out of touch of reality, right?
You've nailed it. I can't. I tear my hair out when I look in like textbooks and they have write to your basketball coach apologizing for not attending practice or something. There's all these fake writing tasks. It's like nobody does that in the real world anymore. Why are you making someone write a formal letter to a basketball coach? You're all in a WhatsApp group, or you're going to see them next day. It's just, let's have real tasks. Let's make something like the reality of digital formats that we write in now is very different. And yeah, it's frustrating when I see things like that. Like, yeah, these very weirdly formal sort of complaining to the city council about the state of your park, the kind of IELTS writing tasks. Like, what is that? Nobody's doing that. Come on.
No, you don't do that. Actually, thank God, there's quite a good website that I often use when I teach. It's called ESL Brains, and most of the tasks that they provide are quite up to date. And if they give you an exercise most of the time, maybe you're like writing as a member of customer support or something like that, and someone sends in a complaint and you want to respond to the complaint because there was a delay in shipping and the person hasn't received their shipping. So it's more like what you would actually do, but definitely not right. Like, I have never written to the city council. Like,
Yeah.
What is the percentage of people that write to city council complaining about parks in the general population?
I guess it used to be higher. These writing tasks come from when it was a physical need a need to physically write letters and such. But yeah, I know the site ESL Brains, and yeah, it's got real life, like authentic materials of TED Talks and articles which like come from the real world of. They're not designed for ESL learners, so I like that because it's we're I'm not sure, is it inductive or deductive, but we're taking real examples and then pulling out the language from that rather than giving people a load of building blocks and letting them figure out what to do.
So in a way, that's also what separates a modern teacher from a. I don't really like that distinction that much, but it helps to kind of think about it: modern teacher versus traditional teacher. Because what is traditional? Traditional can be 5 years ago, or it can be the 19th century, right? So it's a little bit vague. But how language is being taught in the nowadays world, where we have internet, when we're always wired, and so on, and how it was taught pre that, so to say. So there's definitely a difference. But you also mentioned social media, because also what I have seen from your work, I also have seen that you you have released a few books, which I would like to go into deeper a little bit later in the podcast. But I also read and looked through a couple of your articles on Medium and on LinkedIn. And these two platforms really come about often because many people write on both. I also transitioned to Substack not that long ago, just because they have a separate section for podcasts, which I feel is lacking on Medium. So on Medium, it's really fun to, and these are very different platforms. They're quite similar in some ways, but they serve a different purpose. So
Yeah.
let's say when you write on Medium and when you write on LinkedIn, do you have different goals when you write on these different platforms? Because LinkedIn, most people are familiar with it. Most people don't understand it at all. They don't know what LinkedIn is for and how to use it. It's like I liked one phrasing that is like one of the nerdy friends of other social media platforms, and that nerdy friend is not really well understood by others. So I feel like that's LinkedIn in some ways. And also Medium is a platform that mostly only writers that are also readers use.
Yeah.
So could you please talk a little bit about these two platforms and how do you use them? For what purposes do you use them? And do you write differently on them?
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack in that. I think understanding the format or the context that you're writing in, like how to write effectively on Medium or effectively on LinkedIn, requires a lot of reading and analysis and trial and error. And there are so many different purposes you can have. I mean, dealing with Medium first, your goal might be to make money, right? Because you can make money through publishing articles and being part of the partner program. So if that's your goal, you might be publishing a large number of articles, just talking about popular topics, using more of a, not clickbait, but attention grabbing style. And your goal is to get people clapping for the article, writing comments and earning you money. That's not my goal on Medium. I started publishing articles there to meet other writers, I guess hoping that they may connect with other projects that I'm doing. It's a very good space for multilingual writers, I should say, because it's quite equitable. Like anyone can publish, but you can build your authority there. Let's say you get published in one of the magazines or the publications with more readers. It's great to be able to say, hey, I had an article in Better Marketing or in the Writing Cooperative or some of the bigger publications. That's something you can put in your portfolio, and it helps you to show that other people value your work. So that's another reason that I write there, is to be, published in these publications. And I guess the third reason is to have it's nicely formatted and it's all regular on Medium, the way that the blogs look. So it's a just place to host my articles. I mean, I use them for my courses as well. People can read about how to use good writing structure, or about formality, like we were talking about earlier. So they can find my articles there, and that can be part of reading resources for my courses or community. Yeah, so why do I write on Medium? I guess it was slightly easier than hosting everything on my own website, on my blog. It's interactive, and you can meet other writers. But yeah, you're right. I think it's mostly writers on Medium, so it's quite insular. If you want to reach a larger number of readers, and you're writing on health or on cryptocurrency or something, then it's probably better to try and reach those readers elsewhere.
And what about LinkedIn? Because I think you really nailed it when you said that it's quite hard to reach people that are outside of the profession that you're actually in. So, of course, being a writer doesn't mean that you're only interested in writing. You're still a human being. So you might have your other interests. Let's say you can still be interested in sports. You can still be interested in medicine or whatever. But still, it's like a very particular audience there, which I really enjoy. I really had a good time writing on Medium, because it feels like you're kind of either you found your tribe or you're finding your tribe, because you interact with people, they comment, you know that they're also writers, so you go read their articles and you comment, and then you talk, and then you go on podcasts, and it's a lot of fun. So that is true. And also you get it's not that hard to get visibility, so it doesn't take you forever to get your first comment on your article. It's of course it depends on how well you write and how interesting your topics are and the magic of the algorithm, but but still it's possible to get some interaction, which is always more fun than just writing on your own blog and then not seeing any. Maybe people are reading, you can check the statistics that there are views, but you don't get any feedback, which is, so I feel like it's a very good mix of like having your blog, but also type of social media like blog. So it's interesting. But what about LinkedIn? Because most people, when they think about LinkedIn, they don't think about a place to write articles. They think about maybe a place to look for jobs or places to connect with people to whom I want to write a message. But some people use it as a place to post articles, and they do it on a regular basis, like Veronica, which I had interviewed a few times, and also Antonello, Fabio, likewise. So how do you see LinkedIn in this regards, as a writer, not just like as a regular user?
Just touching on what you said about Medium, and it's true for LinkedIn as well. It's like the world of writing has changed. You can't just publish something and expect readers to come to you. You have to go to where the readers are. And the readers are on platforms where they're getting a lot of value, like Medium or LinkedIn. So that's why, primarily it's good to publish on platforms like that, because you can find your audience there and they can find you, as opposed to just having a blog and hoping that people magically find this blog. I mean, that it's too much content online now. Why are people on LinkedIn? For their own means and to get things. I think anyone's lying if they say, I'd go on LinkedIn because it's fun. I just love hanging out there. I mean, primarily it's like a content marketing platform now. So the general idea is that people write useful and interesting posts and articles. I mean, it's not so much articles there. It tends to be posts and slideshows and even videos, but things which are useful and interesting to their network. And you can build that network yourself. LinkedIn is more now like a networking site than just post your profile and get a job. It has changed in that way. And yeah, there's still very few people, very few of the users. There's 1 billion users or so, and only 3% of them, I think, are publishing posts and writing. So there's still very few people producing content. But yeah, the reason people are doing that is to take their people in their network to the next stage of possibly working with them. Again, I think it's an utter lie. People say, "Oh, I just write because I want to help people." You want to help yourself. Everybody does. Everyone wants more money and better job, better life. You do get a really great feeling from helping people. I mean, I publish sort of posts and tips about writing and English, and it's wonderful to get messages where people say, "Oh, you're really helping. Like, thank you for publishing all this." And very few of the people that do read your work will ever pay you or work with you. But yeah, essentially the idea is you publish enough useful and valuable things for free. People trust you. People want to work with you in some way, and they investigate that and maybe visit your website or get in touch or join a course that you're doing. So it's a way to build a client base, and that's why it's so popular with freelancers, with entrepreneurs, solo business people. And just one word on that for any writers out there that are listening and either wanting to get started on LinkedIn or are using LinkedIn already. One of the big mistakes I see is writing for peers. So my clients are writers, and I'm writing for them. Right? I'm writing things which are useful for professional writers who want to use English. But those same writers often say, "Oh, here's 5 tips for using great power words in copywriting." Your audience don't care about that. Your audience are business, B2B businesses, founders, CEOs of startups, whatever. But they don't care about copywriting. They want the results. So you need to write for your audience as well as the people who are going to like and comment on your posts. It's all well and good getting lots of comments and a great feeling for giving your mates and other writers tips, but that's not helping your goal, which is, that goal usually of getting a job or getting more clients or getting more authority and respect from people. So yeah, write for your audience is the tip.
Also, Philip, I know you have a podcast, and it's quite similar. There's an interesting connection between having a podcast and writing on blogs. It's because you have long articles and also long episodes, and you have shorter posts, and you have shorts as videos. So even though they're different mediums, they also have these commonalities, so to say. And whenever I create a video, which is long format like this one, I also create shorter videos. So people might get interested in the full video. Maybe there's something that I really liked and I want to just put it outside of the podcast and so on. But with some platforms, I feel comfortable doing that, like posting shorts on Instagram, on TikTok, even on Facebook Reels or YouTube Shorts feels supernatural. Posting shorts on LinkedIn feels awkward. And every time I do it, I think, am I doing the right thing? Is this weird? So being a writer and a podcast host, what do you think about that?
I mean, I've only started doing more shorts, these vertical video formats where it's, a minute long. Like you said, things like YouTube and Instagram. I've only started doing that recently. Is it awkward on LinkedIn? I think there's a lot of blowback and a lot of criticism of people going a bit too hard for authority. All the short videos on LinkedIn can be a bit cringe because it's,
Yeah.
hey, bro, listen to my podcast. Like people waving their hands around, like you need to do this. And it's interesting what you say though. Like, do shorts work on LinkedIn? I don't see why not. I think people are more likely to watch a 60-second clip and to get interested in a topic. Video is a good way to allow people to hear you, to speak and to see you. I suppose they have things like YouTube Shorts, and TikTok has an algorithm which is designed for the short form video, so maybe they're more successful on those platforms.
Because I was just thinking about the culture of LinkedIn in and of itself, because it's more of this, I would say, again, the word formal kind of suits what I want to say, but also not. But it's definitely the level of formality is different than posting on even Facebook. So the language that people use, they're more professional people there. It's not only your grandma and your cousins and your school buddies and so on. It's more where people come to meet clients and also want to maybe check what the CEO of a company is doing, maybe connect with him or her. It's a different environment. And I was just thinking whether these kind of short form videos actually fits that environment, because that's why I feel awkward. It feels like maybe the community doesn't really want that. That's why they didn't create a separate, like shorts category like there's on Facebook. So maybe it doesn't suit the purpose. But this is just like I went on a tangent. It's not our topic. Was just really curious from another podcast host his thoughts. But
just picking up, on what you said about it, it feels like people don't want that. I think shorts are probably quite successful on LinkedIn. If it's a well-produced, very short video, many people will watch it. I think it's about being different as well. Everyone on LinkedIn writing these boring formal posts of like, oh, we are delighted to announce, I'm thrilled and humbled to have worked at this company. It's safe. They don't want blowback of being told, oh, you're acting in a way which is different from everyone else. But in fact, that's what gets the attention, is being different. The biggest creators or influencers on LinkedIn are often very colorful characters who push the boundaries just enough to be very different and get that attention. So I don't know, I'd say go for it. Why not post shorts on LinkedIn?
Yeah, then gather data, see how people react, and maybe change your plan accordingly if it's necessary. So you always have to just see what, as you said, I really liked when you were speaking about the formal letters, and it's not applying or not applying the rules. It's the results that you get in this regards. Like, does the other person understand you, what you want to say? Do you get the right feedback? Well, do you get what you want, basically? And if the other person is happy and you're happy, it's good communication. That's what matters in some regards.
That's a good point. And where you write matters a lot. If you're writing one-to-one an email, then you got to make sure that person's understanding you in the way that you intend. If you're writing in the abyss of social media, this huge feed of infinite posts, what's your goal? If it's just to virtue signal and say, I want everybody at my company to know that I have publicly praised them, write that boring stuff. Write, oh, I'm delighted to announce a new client has signed with. But if you want to actually get attention or new people viewing your business or what you're saying, people assigning more value to what you say, you have to be different. You have to stand. If there's 10 posts in the feed and they all say, I'm happy to announce, you're not going to read any of them because it's all the same. If you read one that says like, last night I had a fight with a 500-pound gorilla. People are like, oh wow, that's different. Why? That's it doesn't fit in to. It's not business-like, is it? But as long as it's not over the line of writing about very insensitive topics or something which is just outright stupid and not relevant, then it's great. Like, go for difference, not the same.
Right. And you also have mentioned that you have a writing community. So it's not like you just help private clients who want to upskill themselves. It's also a community that you hold. And could you speak a little bit more about it? Who this community is for, and well, what it is for?
Yeah, sure. It's something I started last year, and I've run some networking groups, and with the idea of helping a larger number of people in a way that doesn't require like one-on-one time. Because if I had coaching calls with everyone, I've only got a certain number of hours. So yeah, I designed a community. I guess it's a more common practice now in business is to get a larger number of people to pay a small amount per month, per year, whatever it is, for a service where they can all hang out together and learn from each other. Right. So yeah, in my community, there's if you sign up, you get sort of mini courses and lots of resources to help you with your writing. We have live calls where people can ask me questions and ask each other questions. We have workshops where I talk about a particular writing topic, like using show don't tell was a recent one, or writing for social media. But yeah, I guess the main thing is like the forum. So it's a big forum where people can share their work, ask questions, learn things. I post lots of tips on there, and it's really getting bigger than just me talking to lots of people. The idea is they're talking to each other and they're learning from each other. Mm-hmm. So a lot of the writers in my group now have connected with each other on social media, or they're emailing each other saying, oh, can you look at this work and I'll look at your work, and they're really helping each other improve and getting perspectives from people in different countries, different continents. Is becoming something much bigger than just me giving advice to a larger number of people. So I'm really excited about where it's going, and as it grows, we'll have more expert workshops and more features and more courses and things where all the people participating can feel part of this journey that we're taking together and can really benefit.
Well, that's interesting, because not that long ago, I've joined one community which is in a way similar, but I will want to know how similar it is, because how similar is it? So because I live in Portugal, I started learning Portuguese a year ago when I relocated here. And from very early on, one of my first online teachers recommended me a podcast, which was called Portuguese with Leo. Very good quality, intermediate level podcast. For a beginner, it's intense, but over time, it pays dividends. So it definitely is a good podcast to listen. And I was listening to it. I was improving. I was reading the transcripts and translating. I enjoyed the guy's speech, the pronunciation, everything was going well. And then I reached the point where I understood that I have listened and read everything that I can. And then I found his Patreon, of course, where there's more content, because that's how things work nowadays, which I really like. You give free stuff. If people want more, they pay a little and they get more stuff. And so I did that. I became his Patreon. And I noticed that he also has a feature which is also Discord community. Like, you get access to a Discord community. I was like, I thought Discords are for either gamers, for moms that want to talk one to another in private, and sometimes for teaching, because it actually is a good platform to do that. But I haven't been using Discord much, so I thought, okay, I'll try it out. I went in and I realized, like, whoa, there's so many things here. There's the forum, there's also separate channel for video calls. There's like, it's such an interesting environment, and I felt like it's quite good for community building. So he's using Discord to do that, and it's very easy to join. Like, I was not a user of Discord. I just pressed join, an app, a window opens, something like I signed up, I'm in, and I'm part of the community. Um, do you also use Discord as your community building tool, or do you use some other tool? In other words, how can people, me for example, how can I become part of your community?
Yeah, so I haven't used Discord. I don't know that much about it, but I have heard it's good. It's an option for building a community. At the moment, my sort of forum is a Facebook group. So that may be a bit old fashioned and not everybody loves Facebook. But one of the benefits of that is people are already checking their Facebook and then things from the community pop up. So you get a lot more interaction and chat, which is one benefit of it. I will probably be moving my community to my own platform. So I have a sort of platform that I use for email marketing and to keep contacts and things like that, and that has a community feature that is rolling out at the moment. So I'll probably move things there because it will be great for people to be able to like instantly access courses and not go to a different page. But yeah, there's lots of options. I think there's Mighty Networks and there's other options too. So I guess Discord and Facebook and things like that are something that most people know how to use and can find it out easily. One difficulty of, if I were to use something like Slack or Mighty Networks, you're going to lose people who say, "Oh, it's something new I have to learn. How does it work?" And I couldn't figure it out. So yeah, I think there's plenty of options, but no, I haven't investigated Discord. But I mean, it's great that you're a part of this community, and I think hopefully you're more motivated to learn, right? Because you're chipping in some money, so you've got some kind of accountability to get value for paying that, and you find all these people who motivate you to learn along with them. So I have a community. I have a community not just to make money and say, "Oh, hey, pay me." It's because I believe in it. I'm a member of many writing communities, and it's been so helpful to me and it's so motivating. I live in a place where I can't really join a writing group here, so I'm in several communities online, and that's why I thought it can work for any profession, really, any skill.
Well, I know that's first things first. I'll definitely join your Facebook group. I want to check it out, and it would be interesting to become part of the community as well. So that's right off the bat. And second thing, what I wanted to say is that I know that soon you'll be arriving to Madeira, and we do have one little writing group here. I was part of it for a while. Nowadays, just the timing doesn't really work because I have my private classes when they have their meetings. And it's just a writing circle where people come and, they have creative writing exercises or something like that. And it's like a very liberal circle. There's one guy that most of the time leads the group, but sometimes he's just like, I don't want to do it next week. So who wants to lead the circle next week? So someone says, okay, I'll do it. And it's fun. So once you're here, I could send you the contacts of Michael. He's an American boy. And I think he would really be delighted if a new person would just come to meet, because
yeah, for sure.
These island dwellers, there's not many of us, and it's good just to know because you being in the Canaries feels closer to me than people who are in Europe while I'm
Yes.
living in Madeira. So
There's that commonality. People have, moved to experience the island lifestyle and, better weather maybe. Yeah, it would be great to meet this group, and I'll be doing some book promo uh, in Madeira for the Bitcoin anthology book that I edited and put together. And yeah, I'm sure we can meet up, and I'll be doing an event for that, I think. I don't know where or when, but
that's cool.
you'll probably hear about it if you're in the same networks and forums as many of the expats in Madeira.
So a few things here. One question is, do you see a tendency of, let's say, people who are joining your courses, becoming your clients, joining the group, that they want to somehow change their lifestyle in any kind of way? Because there are more and more remote workers. People want to be independent in terms of location. And, after COVID, many things have changed. Some things changed for the worst and some changed for the better. Like this part, I believe is definitely what has changed for the better. Like not being scared of online services and trusting online services more than before. So people have become much more comfortable with that. So that's the first question. And the second question is about your books. So you have mentioned a Bitcoin ontology. Could you later also please speak a little bit more about that? Because that's a topic that raises a lot of questions. It caught my interest, Bitcoin ontology, yet I understood that whenever I hear this phrase, I have no idea if I would open the book, I would have no idea what I could find there. So it's a very mysterious phrase. So maybe we can actually begin with that, and then let's speak about the lifestyle thing.
I mean, Bitcoin feels like a slightly dangerous topic, like, veganism or something like that, where if you start talking about it, it puts a lot of people off because there are many divisive or like negative stories or thoughts about it. In terms of Bitcoin itself, I would say it's a good idea for people to learn about it. There's no pressure to do anything. I'm not going to say, oh, I'm an advocate for it, let's buy it. In fact, all this came about because Nico Laamanen, the publisher who lives in Madeira as well, actually, was a client, and we worked on his writing, and I started to learn about Bitcoin. And after a while, I suggested this idea of marrying the idea of stories with Bitcoin. I mean, the reason Bitcoin is a bit scary is it's very technical, and it's often people don't feel connected to it in any way because it's very conceptual and mathematical and difficult to understand what it actually is and does. So what people need is stories. And yeah, the idea is that we sourced lots of stories, and people wrote just stories about the future, about sort of sci-fi and dystopias and just human interest stories, which are set in a world or a universe where the financial system is different, or where people use Bitcoin instead of other currencies. So it's been a pretty great project to be a part of, and we'll be continuing it. But yeah, I suppose it all came about through writing, actually, and trying to put together a very technical world, with there's a lot of podcasts on Bitcoin and explainers, but there's not so much entertainment and engagement through that. So I think that's how it came about, and that's the book I'll be promoting in Madeira.
Cool. So when we think about Bitcoin in general, and when we think about stories, as you said, it's a very technical thing, and I have noticed that many technical things lack the ability of being translated into stories. So, take, for example, quantum mechanics, right? I remember my teacher of astronomy, because I had an astronomy course in Lithuania while I was studying anthropology, which might be odd, but bear with me. Anyway, we kind of built we had built a good relationship, and he gave me a book. Which was like an introduction into quantum mechanics, just because he liked me and I liked him. So he said, like, hey, check this out. It might be interesting for you. And it attempted to translate quantum mechanics into layman's terms, but it failed terribly. Like, you had to have at least, like, still a university level, a bachelor level of understanding of mathematics to even get through the introduction. Like, you open an introduction and you get a formula. That's not super user friendly if you're not a mathematician, but you would like to learn something about quantum mechanics. So I feel like that might be a similar situation that people might have when they think about cryptocurrency. They start listening to something, they're like, whoa, I have to have way more knowledge to listen to this person speaking before I even attempt to. So it feels like it's also one of the power of clear, direct, simple, and understandable storytelling to explain difficult, complex, and not super mundane things. So being able to translate very difficult matters into something that a layman or a person who has nothing to do with it might understand. So I think that's great. I'm eager to actually check it out. And was it difficult to do that? Because, as you said, it's a technical thing. And you had to kind of, I wouldn't say water it down, and definitely not stupefy it. You had to maintain the same essence, but to make it more approachable. Was it very hard to do, or was it actually something that you had a lot of fun with and it didn't require that much thought? Maybe I'm overthinking this point.
Well, as an anthology, we got submissions from lots of different writers, and there are 21 stories in the book, or 22, I think. So they present a variety of stories and realities. It just going back to stories in general and like explaining these difficult concepts. People nowadays need to know why they should care, why they should learn things, and stories are like an emotional hack. We only care about ourselves and about people and about things that relate to our existence. So if you're talking about astronomy, why the hell should you learn, how to track the trajectory of some star that's millions of years away? But if we say, imagine, in future generations, we may be traveling there, or, we may get contact with aliens, that's somehow relating this complex mathematics and physics to our existence, which is what we care about. So I think that's why stories are important. As for if it was difficult, I think a lot of the stories in the book take the approach of like a what if. So they're not technical explanations of Bitcoin, and it's more just like, what kind of world could exist if this were the case? Or, if we could travel in space, how would this situation work? So the idea of how they get people interested is just like, a lot of the writers had this big idea that had been knocking about in their brains for a long time. Like, an example is the first story in the book is called The Last Mugging, and it's about how in the future, if everybody can publicly view all financial transactions on a ledger, on a public ledger, well, there's no way that you could be mugged, right? If somebody is stealing your money, you send them the money, and then the police catches the guy in 45 minutes because he's, buying a drink at a liquor store or something, and he's just been caught. It's a kind of funny concept. It's a what if, what if muggings and that physical violence to extract money from people didn't happen, couldn't happen. Well, that's a concept that's interesting enough to be like, oh wow, that's got me thinking. Is that possible? And could that be a consequence of this changing world? So there's a lot of kind of what if stories and things to pique people's interest. There's loads of great concepts in the book that, I think even if you're not a technical person, you can get a lot of enjoyment from.
And I think this is going to be more and more important in the future because we can argue that change has been here all the time because it has. And, you get the printing press, you get the internet, now you have AI, and things are like always becoming different from how they were. But the speed of that change might increase. And when even we look at the financial market and the tools being used in the financial market nowadays, even take Bitcoin as an example, it might reach a point where it will be super difficult to understand for a regular human being, even for a person that is in this area, like an expert of what actually is happening. Because there's this historian, Yuval Harari. He's the writer of *Sapiens*, I think. And I listened to one of his podcasts on the Diary of CEO about AI and how complicated things are getting and how complicated it might get in his predicament, at least. So I think like being able to first keep track of it and tell stories about it so it doesn't get that far away from us that we cannot understand it anymore, like to kind of keep bringing it down to earth, so to say. It's like that's the power that you have as a storyteller, as a writer, as a communicator. So it feels like most likely writing and writing well is one of the best skills that you can develop.
And writing stories specifically, because that's something which makes us human. And, stories are the way that we process our reality. So it's going to be increasingly important to be able to tell and understand and interact through stories in all their different forms. So that's why there's such a big trend of, oh, hey, let's do storytelling and let's create these stories. But yeah, it's going to be increasingly important. Totally agree.
So, if we could leave our listeners with one idea, or let's say one suggestion, let's imagine that our listeners are all storytellers because they are. It doesn't matter if you're a writer or not, you're still a storyteller. You tell millions of stories every day. Okay, maybe that's a little bit blown out, not million, but you still tell many stories throughout your day-to-day life. And some of these stories just happen to be in written form, right? So if you would like to become a better writer, aka a better storyteller, what one tip could you leave our listeners with? Like something that they could do to, I wouldn't say make their stories better, but maybe more impactful, if we could use this term in this situation.
That's a good one. I think understanding story is quite difficult. When writers start off, they try to think about the technical things or want to write something beautiful. It takes a long time to write powerful stories. I think that's why often famous authors are often older, because they've spent a lot of time crafting that. So I'm not sure I can boil it down into one tip, but I mean, read great stories, analyze them, and try to study the craft of storytelling or creating stories. I think if you're using English and that's not your first language, you also have to work on that as well, because stories in English are quite different and they require different language and different skills to in other first languages. So I don't know if I can come up with one tip, but get better at writing stories, however you do that.
because it's a very good example when you said that most of the people who create great stories tend to be older because they research them for a long time. Um, my girlfriend and I have been reading Frank Herbert's Dune, and it's a great book. And like, as far as we got into the book, it might be, at least for my girlfriend, I'm not yet certain, one of the best pieces of science fiction that she has ever read, which tops Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings, all the great the great stories there. And she researched Frank and watched a couple of interviews with him and so on, and it's really visible how much research he had to do to create the world of Dune, because he studied the life in the desert very, very thoroughly, and what happens in deserts, how animals behave, what is in the layers beneath the sand, the
Brilliant.
whole ecosystem. He really, really went deep. Also thinking about all the people like Bene Gesserits with their telekinetic powers and so on. He researched like monks and ayahuasca and like many so much has gone into creating that story that you understand that you cannot really top that person
Yeah.
without
Guess
doing the amount of research that he has done.
yeah, I guess that's where the adage "write what you know" comes from. If you know something so deeply, whether you've experienced it or researched it a lot, if you know something really deeply, you can present that in its most accurate and boiled down form, and readers get that sense of like, this is exactly what I expect, or I'm exactly there, and there's more to this than the author is saying.
Yeah.
I think that's a key thing. So yeah, be an expert about the stories you tell as well, whether that's what you've experienced or what you've researched.
So, as we said in the beginning of our conversation, you cannot really separate um, writing from or language from culture, and you cannot really also separate writing good content from reading good content. So you cannot just be a writer and not be a reader, or maybe not a reader per se, but you must be interested in what you're writing, in what you are writing about, because you cannot just create tons of content when you're not interested in, because it's going to be shallow, it's going to be terrible. You won't even you would not like to read that. So why do you think that the other people might?
There's a parallel between language learning and writing. People often say things like, "I wish I could speak Portuguese," and then people who are actually going to learn Portuguese say, "I want to learn Portuguese," because they understand the work that's necessary and they're interested in taking the steps to get there. And the same thing happens with writing. Like, oh, I want to write a novel. It's like, but you want to have the book and imagine it top of the Amazon charts, but do you want to read hundreds of books, do all the research, like go through years of learning the craft and all the difficult staring at a blank page and getting bad feedback? And do you want to go through all of that? Because if you do, that's great, like you're a writer. But if you don't, then you're just some person that wants to hold their own book because of their own ego. So I think that's a good parallel with languages. So, I
True.
mean, that's my thought is, yeah, if you do want that book, or if you do want that job or respect as a writer, then you have to go through all of those learning stages, and like thinking long term is a must.
And thank God there's a lot of good content that might help us do that. And of course, there's Philip. So, like, if you're on this journey, I believe you might be a very worthwhile. Sorry to objectify you, calling you a resource, but your knowledge, the skills that you have gathered could definitely help a lot of people. even me included, because I'm a hobbyist. I'm not a writer per se, and I just like to write for fun, writing diaries, writing blog posts. But who knows? Who knows? In the future, I might want to take it up to another level. So it depends, like, because my career is also very closely knit with writing, and most likely it's a tool that I will have to develop and develop and develop over time. So it was really, really interesting for me to have a conversation with you. It was great picking your brain, and I do hope that we will have a second go, maybe in the future, because we covered some topics, we didn't touch upon some other topics. But is there something that is in your mind that was left unsaid and you would like to voice it out before we say goodbye?
I think you did ask when at one point you asked me two questions, and we got on to talking about Bitcoin. The first question was something about whether people want to better their lives or take advantage of like remote work, and
Yeah.
I guess the answer is yes. I think there's a big disparity in wealth in the world, and unfortunately, some people are born into situations and countries where they're less likely to get opportunities and to be able to build wealth and have a good career. Now that's changing, and that's great. And I think I try to help. Yeah, many of the people who seek my help come from countries which are not top economies, and they want to get the benefits of having clients in the US or getting a remote job somewhere else. And that's wonderful. I think my advice would be to think long term. There's a lot of people out there who are saying, "Oh, buy my course and you'll get $10,000 instantly," or how to crack Upwork and get loads of money straight away. That's all fake. That's to get your money. That's not help. Because
That's their business plan.
if it were possible, to grow your channel on YouTube to 10,000 subscribers in a week, everyone would be doing it, or more people would be doing it.
Well, good, good. Thanks a lot. Thanks for all the tips. It was a great pleasure. And I think this is not where our conversation will end. Just the first go will stop.
You will be welcome on the Trouble with Writing podcast anytime, and hope to meet you in person too when I make my way to your island.
Definitely, definitely. We will arrange on that. And thanks for all the listeners who have been listening. And if there's a second round, or maybe I will go on Philip's podcast, I will add all the links in the description to update what has happened, what will happen in the future. So
Great.
So Philip, thank you. Thanks a lot. Till next time.
See you later, Paulius. Thanks very much.